What if indecision wasn't a personality flaw, but a silent killer of every dream you've ever had? People talk about fear. People talk about failure, but few ever talk about hesitation, that pause between knowing what must be done and actually doing it. It's in that space where most dreams die, not in disaster, not in defeat, but in delay. And I'll tell you this from a lifetime of study: the world does not reward the smartest man, it rewards the one who decides. I've seen men with less talent outpace geniuses. I've seen the bold build empires while the brilliant sit in silence. Why? Because decisiveness is courage in motion, and cowardice wears 1,000 masks, the most dangerous of which is, I'm still thinking about it. That's why I wrote, definiteness of decision always requires courage, sometimes very great courage, because to decide is to declare war on everything that keeps you small. So I'll ask you now, what truth have you been circling, simply because you're too afraid to choose? Let me tell you about a man named Samuel. He wasn't born to wealth, nor was he born to hardship. He was born to something far more dangerous: comfort. Not comfort in the sense of luxury, but comfort in never being tested. His life offered no tragedies, but also no triumphs, no waves, just gentle ripples. Samuel was bright, studious, polite. Every teacher said he had potential. Every mentor said he could go far, but Samuel never went far, because he never decided to go anywhere. Each time a fork appeared on his path, he paused. He paused to think, to analyze, to gather more information. The world called it patience. I call it paralysis. At 23, he was offered a startup position, low salary, high risk. He declined. At 27, a mentor invited him to co-write a book. He hesitated. The offer passed. At 31, his partner asked, "Do we start the family now?" Samuel needed more time. Each moment that could have forged his destiny became another pebble tossed in the river. By 45, Samuel had a quiet job, a quiet home, a quiet life. But inside, a storm raged. What if I had just chosen? You see, dear reader, life does not reward the hesitant. It rewards the man who acts, even imperfectly. Because while action refines, inaction decays. The man who moves learns. The man who stalls withers. Samuel didn't lose because he made the wrong decisions. He lost because he made none at all. Let me contrast that with another man. His name was Elijah. Elijah came from pain, poverty, a fractured home. But in that environment, he made one vow early: I will never be paralyzed by fear. At 19, Elijah moved across the country with $400 and a dream. At 23, he opened a failing business and kept it open through 3 winters of loss. At 28, he said yes to a marriage most thought he was too young for. He didn't always win, but he always chose. And in the choosing, Elijah became strong, not because life handed him easy paths, but because every decision was a blade that sharpened him. The difference between Samuel and Elijah was not IQ, not luck, not opportunity. It was definiteness of decision. Elijah lived by the principle I taught. Successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if at all, while Samuel did the reverse. He delayed every choice. He second-guessed every instinct. And so while Elijah rose, Samuel became a man haunted by potential, a man whose tombstone could read, "Here lies all the things that could have been." You must understand, a decision is not just a choice. It is a commitment, a cutting away, a crossing of threshold. When you decide, truly decide, you kill off the illusion that you can keep all doors open, and that's where courage lives. In the moment when you say, "This is the path, and I will burn the others," not because you are reckless, but because you are resolved. And the reward for such boldness? Clarity, power, progress, because every step forward generates momentum, and every step avoided generates regret. So if you're listening to this, and you know there's a decision you've been postponing, ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of? Failure, rejection, mistake, or is it freedom? Because sometimes the scariest thing is no longer having excuses. I will leave you, for now, with this. The future you desire is not waiting on resources. It is waiting on your resolve. The decision is the doorway. The courage is the key. Now walk through. Every great decision must walk through fire. You may have felt confident when you chose, steady, convicted, unshakable. But mark my words, the moment after decision comes the test, and the test will not arrive with banners or warning. It will arrive as doubt, delay, distraction, defeat, dressed in disguise. Let me share with you the story of Amara. Amara was an artist, not by profession, by obsession. From the moment she could hold a pencil, she drew. Landscapes, faces, dreams, fears. Her teachers admired her. Her family tolerated her. But no one believed she could make a life from it. So she tried to obey the world. She enrolled in accounting. She kept her sketchbooks hidden. She became the person everyone respected, but no one truly saw. Until one day, she cracked. Not in crisis, in clarity. She had been offered a promotion, more money, more prestige, more distance from her calling, and in that moment, she made a decision. She would quit, move cities, launch her art career, alone. It was terrifying. It was glorious. It was the moment her life began. But then came the test. Month 1, no clients. Month 2, rejection from 2 galleries. Month 3, her savings began to drain. Her mother called. "Are you sure this is wise?" Her friends asked. "Maybe you can freelance on the side." Even her own voice turned against her. Maybe they were right. Maybe I'm not that talented. Maybe this dream was too big. This is what I call the battlefield of choice, when the world throws shadows over the light you dared to ignite. Now listen to me closely. This battlefield is sacred, because only here do you prove that your decision was not a whim, but a warrior's oath. And Amara, she stayed. She stayed when the rent was late. She stayed when the critics laughed. She stayed when her own hand trembled over the canvas. And on the 123rd day, a stranger walked into her small studio. He was a curator. He had seen her work online, one piece, a painting titled Becoming. He stood in silence for 22 minutes. Then he said, "This is what the world has been waiting for." That painting now hangs in the Chicago Museum of Modern Expression. Her studio tripled in size, her income tenfold, but none of that matters as much as this. Amara kept her word. She honored her decision through the storm. Let's pause. Let's extract the wisdom. Many people confuse doubt with discernment. They call their hesitation wisdom, but wisdom moves. Wisdom chooses. It is not indecision dressed in intellectual clothing. Amara's greatest battle was not against critics. It was against her own need to be understood, approved, and applauded. But decisiveness does not seek applause. It seeks alignment, and alignment is invisible to the world until the results make it undeniable. Every time you decide, especially in hardship, you deepen a groove in your identity. You stop being a person who tries. You become a person who acts. That action may be imperfect. It may be ridiculed, but it is yours. And when your life is built from your own materials, it can withstand any storm. The wind does not destroy a tree with deep roots. Now let me tell you what most men don't realize. The first decision is only the beginning. The true power lies in the decision to keep deciding, deciding to rise again, deciding to stay in the room, deciding to silence the voices that offer escape. Amara had one massive decision, but it was her 100 smaller ones that shaped her greatness. To paint again, to show up, to keep her promise. This, my friend, is where you separate the dreamers from the destined. Now let me turn this mirror toward you. What have you decided lately? And when it was tested, did you remain or retreat? The world will never stop testing you, but the tests are not punishment. They are invitations. Invitations to step into a version of yourself you haven't yet met. One who is fierce, one who is focused, one who no longer fears the silence between applause, because that silence is sacred. That's where your power awakens. Now go, reaffirm your path, reignite your oath, and walk as if the decision has already paid off. Because if you hold long enough, it will. There is a strange paradox in life. Every great gain begins with a painful goodbye. People think courage feels like fire, explosive, energizing, full of motion. But I tell you, from a lifetime of study, courage often feels like grief. Why? Because when you finally decide, truly decide, you must sever something. A comfort, a relationship, a belief, an old self. And that, dear reader, does not feel like celebration. It feels like a funeral. Let me tell you the story of Devin. Devin was a preacher's son, raised in Georgia, expected to follow the same steps his father and grandfather had taken. But inside, he felt the pull of something else. Architecture, buildings, angles, design, cities. It called to him like scripture, but no one in his family understood. God gave you a gift for the pulpit, they said. You'd be wasting your voice behind drawings. So Devin enrolled in seminary. He memorized the words. He mimicked the cadence. He wore the robes, but every night he sketched. Buildings rising from his fingertips, blueprints on napkins, sketches on hymnals, until one night he stopped lying. He told his father, he dropped out, he packed his bags, and moved to New York. It was not heroic, it was agonizing. He lost the respect of the only world he had known. His friends distanced themselves. His family prayed for his return. And Devin sat alone in a city that didn't know his name, with only a pencil and the decision he had made. Now I must explain something important. This part of the journey, the severing, is where most people retreat, not because they are weak, but because they don't understand that this pain is proof of progress. You cannot carry your old life into your new one. One must be buried. And Devin understood this, not at first, but slowly, not easily, but honestly. He began working night shifts, studying in public libraries, submitting applications to architecture schools. He was rejected 4 times, but on the 5th, he was accepted. That acceptance letter didn't feel like a reward. It felt like permission to rebuild, and that rebuilding became resurrection. I want you to understand, every decision that moves you forward will first disorient you because it cuts away the familiar, but the familiar is not the same as the fulfilling, and sometimes the greatest loyalty is not to your past, but to your potential. Devin's journey wasn't clean, it wasn't glamorous, but today his work is stamped on buildings across America. His father now proudly tells his church about his son, the architect, but none of that mattered as much as this. Devin chose to become himself, and he paid the price up front. Let me ask you a question that few dare to confront. What must you let go of to become who you are meant to be? Is it an old story, a toxic allegiance, a version of you built only to keep others comfortable? You cannot grow and stay comfortable. You cannot rise and stay familiar. You cannot evolve and stay universally liked. So the question is not, will you face loss, but will you allow that loss to be on purpose? Will you choose the loss that leads to liberation, or keep accepting the comfort that leads to captivity? Let's speak plainly. There is no such thing as a decision without cost. Every decision costs something: comfort or courage, approval or authenticity, illusion or impact. When you decide not to decide, you are still deciding and you are still paying. But unlike bold decisions, these passive ones never bring you power. They drain it. Let's return to courage. Courage is not loud. It does not strut. It often doesn't even speak. Courage is the quiet moment you tell yourself, this will hurt, but it will heal. And then you walk forward anyway. Devin walked, Amara walked, Elijah walked, and now it is your turn. Do not expect applause. Do not expect clarity in every step. Do not expect the world to understand. Expect resistance. Expect inner tremors. Expect moments where you question everything. But also expect strength you didn't know you had. Expect allies you didn't see coming. Expect clarity that only comes after commitment. The future favors the brave. But first, it tests their vow. Make yours, then sever, then soar. You are not breaking your life. You are building one worth living. There comes a time in every person's life when the crowd grows silent, not because it stops speaking, but because you have stopped listening. This is the final threshold, not of ambition, not of success, but of sovereignty. You are no longer a seeker. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are no longer measuring your truth against the reactions of others. You have become the man who decides. And that, my dear friend, is the rarest breed of all. Let me tell you a story. His name was Marcus, not a philosopher, not a speaker, not a millionaire, just a man who had spent decades saying yes to everyone but himself. A father, a husband, an employee, a volunteer. He was dependable, predictable, always there for others. Until one evening, as he sat alone on the porch after his daughter's wedding, something broke inside him. Not with anger, not with regret, with clarity. He realized he had lived everyone else's version of a good life. Not once had he asked, "What do I want?" He had survived, he had served, he had supported, but he had not lived. So at the age of 59, Marcus decided. He sold the house. He moved to the mountains. He enrolled in a creative writing program. He wrote the book he had dreamed of since age 22. It didn't hit bestseller lists, but it hit something greater, his soul. And the day he held that book in his hands, he said, "For the first time, I know who I am." Now let me tell you why this matters. Because decision is not about ambition. It is not about outcomes. It is not about proving others wrong. It is about becoming the author of your life. Most people are not living. They are reacting to expectations, to norms, to fears, to patterns set by ghosts they've never questioned. But the man who decides breaks the script. He stops reading the lines written by others, and he begins to write his own. Let's go deeper. Decision is not a moment. It's a muscle. Every time you choose, intentionally, you strengthen your ability to act. Every time you delay, you shrink it. Your brain learns, I either own my path or outsource it. And here's the tragedy. Most people are outsourcing their lives to trends, social validation, parental expectations, cultural dogmas. The result? A life that is technically full but emotionally hollow. Because it was never theirs to begin with. But not you, because you are hearing these words. And that means something inside you has stirred. You are no longer content with drifting. You are ready to drive. So I ask you now, what would your life look like if every choice from this day forward was made by your highest self, not your fears, not your wounds, not your past, but by the part of you that sees clearly, the part that remembers what you once dreamed, the part that still believes? What would you do? Who would you become? What would you cut away? And what would you step into? This is not abstract. This is not philosophy. This is practice. Every day, ask yourself, what am I deciding today? Am I acting or avoiding? Am I living in alignment or in approval? Write it. Say it. Declare it. Because the more your life becomes a reflection of your own resolve, the more powerful you will feel, not because you control outcomes, but because you control intention. And that, my friend, is true power, to live by design, not by default. Let me leave you with a challenge. Tomorrow morning, when you rise, do not touch your phone. Do not reach for noise. Instead, reach inward. Ask one question. What will I decide today that my future self will thank me for? And then choose, with fire, with love, with finality. You will not always be right. You will not always be praised, but you will always be free. And that, dear friend, is the only victory that matters. If you made it here, I want to speak to your soul. You are not average. You are not casual. You are not drifting. You are a builder of destiny. And you've just proven it by staying to the end. Now I have one ask. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell. Not because it helps me, but because it commits you. Every time you show up, you train the part of you that shows up. And that repetition, that ritual, becomes revolution. I will keep bringing you fire. You keep bringing your courage. Together, we will not just change your life. We will build a legacy your doubts never saw coming. Now go, Decide boldly, sever fear, live loud, and never, ever look back.